and welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And Dr. Lopkin, we were out last week, but um, but I think the one thing that really resonates with me, and certainly I'm sure our listeners would like your commentary, and there's many points to this, many incidents, but I would like you to address the changing demographics and cultural landscape of America. We look at the Democratic Party silent on DNC protests um, by supporters of Hamas. And this is not just supporters of Palestinian rights, which anyone can make a case for, but Hamas, a group that is corrupt, that has burned baby. I mean, the list can go on, and um, and basically we even look at not even forget about de-radicalization in college. That's bad enough. And Hofstra University, by the way, when I'm talking about that, a higher educate. Well, that's not so sure about that, but that's a pay to play institution. Their president is being called out for remaining silent on the whole Hamas, basically supporting Hamas by their, or support for Hamas by their student group. But then we even have a high school in New York where these beautiful students, young academics, were chasing down a older Jewish lady who basically voiced support on social media for well, saying that she stands by Israel, and the administration, the other knuckleheads, saying that her life wasn't really in danger, although she was basically locking herself in her own room. Just your comments on where we've been or where we've gone. I'm older than you are, but I was a young kid during the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, and a war that actually put America's economy in a precarious position due to the Arab oil boycott. None of this. I never saw any of this. Your thoughts?
Now, this
Nothing like.
this is an absolutely untenable, ridiculous situation. I mean,
But
let
it's
let
scary.
it's terrifying. Let's start with what happened at the Queen's School. Okay, now it wasn't simply an older Jewish woman. This was a teacher. Okay, so
Hmm.
the students were attempting to assault a teacher. She had to lock herself in her classroom, be escorted out by police. They could not get her out of the building directly. They had to get her to another office, lock her in that office until it was safe for them to get her out of the building. Okay. First of all, the idea that students are attacking teachers at all is horrific. The fact that it's driven by anti Semitism makes it more so. But even worse, where the hell is Randy Weingartner? This is her constituent. She had no problem shooting off her mouth. Oh, we have to protect the teachers from COVID. We have to do this. We have to do that. Here, dead
No, I no. Let me
silence.
interject something because you're 100% correct, and it goes in. I'm not giving her any kind of a free pass. You can go on and on about that, and you're 100% correct. But it's always the case. You look at basically, let's say the feminist movement. Where are they in this whole Hamas thing? The rapes and the torture of women. It's only when it relates to conservatives or Republicans, or some of them that serves their own interests. Isn't that it's selective outrage? Am I
It,
not correct?
you're absolutely right. There has been concrete evidence, video footage shot by Hamas, no less, of Hamas members raping women. Where has the Me Too movement been? Dead silent. Where are all these women's groups protesting? Dead silent. It is absolutely deplorable that people would remain silent on this. And the Palestinians have now become the left's cause celeb. Most of them have no clue what's actually going on. It's just an excuse to protest. We've seen interviews from protesters who don't even know what happened on October 7th. They have no idea that Israel hasn't had settlements in the Gaza Strip in over 13 years. They have no idea that Hamas has been ruling Palestinians, and they're the ones that have been oppressing the Palestinians. They have no idea that Hamas kept Palestinians from getting out of the conflict areas, even though Israel gave them warning, told them to leave, because Hamas wants to use them as human shields. The fact that the Democrats are looking at these protesters who are absolutely ignorant of the facts and saying, well, we can't risk losing their votes. You know what? Not only should you lose their votes if you're not willing to stand up for what's right, you should leave politics, period.
Yeah, okay. The Democrats have been doing this for years. I'm not talking about the anti-Semitism or anti-Israelism. It's all about power. They don't look. They put Fetterman in. They put Biden in. People that were basically incoherent. It's all about power. They don't give a shit if a mannequin would vote for them. And here's what I also think, as a Jewish person, yeah, you can look at the dummies that protest, but there's a billion dummies out there, especially in the Democratic Party, protesting this and that. The vagina rallies. I asked a woman what she was protesting, and she literally didn't even know. But what scares me is I think this is 1935 deja vu all over again. No one says anything, everyone's silent, and it's the Jewish people went from the darlings of the liberal establishment to the whipping boys. It's a free pass. God forbid if it's LBGQXL7, if it's a Muslim, if it's a woman, if you name it, a Jew, what the hell? They're fascists anyway. Am I not correct? And
You
it's
are.
dangerous. It's no joke.
You are. This is the late 1930s all over
Yes.
again. Jews have become everybody's favorite patsy again. And
Scapegoat. Yes.
these folks that claim that, oh, they're all for individual rights. It's like, unless you're Jewish, then it doesn't matter. We have to defend a woman's rights, unless they're Jewish, then it doesn't matter.
And you are correct, by the way, and it's no joke. It's no joke, and it's a very scary situation. If it was to put it into context, if anything of even a tenth of what was going on right now in America, I'm not talking about Israel, okay, or the West Bank or the Gaza Strip. What is going on in America, right? A tenth of any other group, black, Hispanic, gay, 24/7 on the news. It's like crickets. If that does not scare you, especially if you're Jewish, then I don't know what to tell you. But I do know what to tell you about one thing. If you're stupid enough to vote for a Democrat, then you deserve what you get, you stupid moron. How does that sound?
Yeah, it is absolutely
You're a moron.
unbelievable. Jews, we've said this before, Jews represent less than 3% of the population, and they represent 60% of hate crime victims. Since October 7th.
And rising.
Yes, since October 7th, the Anti-Defamation League estimates hate crimes against Jews have increased 300%. That's in less than 2 months. It is absolutely unforgivable that people should turn a blind eye to this.
Well, wait a second, though. Biden hasn't turned a blind eye. He put together, and Camilla's in charge, a Islamophobia initiative.
Yes, and now,
okay.
Yeah, and the Democrats in the Senate blocked aid to Israel, and now you've got the left-wing members of the party pushing no aid to Israel unless they do what we tell them to do. Really? They are defending their lives.
Wait a second. The number one Jew hater, Bernie Sanders, is a big catalyst to all this. And where is Chucky Schumer? It's his effing policies, half of them, that got us into this mess.
Yeah,
Okay, open immigration and all the other naivete, Mr. Harvard grad. But yeah, Bernie, the Jew hater, what the hell's going on there?
yeah.
And where is Blumenthal? You were giving him accolades 2 weeks ago. Why isn't he? He never met an MSNBC Mike he didn't like. I don't see shit from him.
No, he's been
Radio
very yeah.
silent, dude.
That hasn't been radio silent, but it has been selective. He has
Yeah,
not
there
been
you
on
go.
any of the national news, but he has given interviews to local news where
Oh wow, that's going to
where
do a
it's
lot of
safe.
good.
Yeah, where it's safe for him to do this because in the state of Connecticut,
Howard.
it's basically 90% approval of Israel. But what we're seeing is again cowardice. Chuck Schumer gave this impassioned speech this morning about how terrible this is. And yet, as head of the Senate, he could not get the aid through. And he had the support of every Republican to push this aid through. I think maybe 3 of them didn't vote for it, which meant he could not get 5 Democrats to back him, or 15 if they were in filibuster. This
Well, it's
is
a very scary situation.
this
Yes,
is political cowardice.
of course, and yes, 100%. And there's no excuse for this. And again, there should be screaming from the. They're talking about Donald Trump about that bullshit impeachment. I'm talking about the first one, but where crickets? Oh, Channel 30 News, like that makes a goddamn difference. Who gives a shit? No one even watches a stupid channel. Hello, but yeah, and Bernie Sanders basically should be declared. I'm saying this honestly, a enemy of the Jews.
Well, he's always been a self-hating Jew. He moved from his hometown of Brooklyn in a neighborhood with a very heavy Jewish population to Vermont that has one of the least diverse populations in the country. So he's,
Three Jews, maybe.
something like that. So he has never been a fan of any minority, never mind Jews. But he needs to go. It is way past time to put him out to pasture.
You know, when he was just a stupid moron, and even the New York Times, when they interviewed him, when I thought it was 2016, I don't remember. Who knows? Who gives a shit? And they interviewed him, and they were even aghast because he's a one trick pony. The top 1%. Other than that, he doesn't know jack shit. The guy never worked until he was 45. When he was 35, he was writing stupid porn articles, I think, for Penthouse. He's a despicable lowlife. How do you like that one?
He is. But, this is even a bigger problem because it's not just, I mean, the politicians are cowards. They are kowtowing to a very vocal minority. It is still a minority of people that are supporting the Palestinians, but they are vocal and they are violent. But this is just a symptom of a bigger problem. And, it's one of the few things any Biden official has done right. The Department of Education is, and the head of the department is an abject moron. We've seen him flub time and time again. But they are investigating Harvard University for indoctrinating their students into anti-Semitism. And that needs to be expanded. That needs to
yeah,
go to every college that gets federal funds.
no question about it. But it happens at the grassroots. I am an historian, and I do know my history. And yeah, you talk about Hitler, that's one person. No, but how did it really happen? It happened in the schools, it happened in the educational system. You took a very sophisticated society, that is Germany, and from the grassroots, the bottom up, you indoctrinated people, the German population, into anti Semitism. And it's happening right here in the good old USA, and it's been happening for a while. So wake up, all you Democratic Jewish voters, and smell the friggin' coffee, moron.
Yeah, again, what we are seeing now is the same thing we saw in Europe in the 1930s. We mentioned earlier what went on with the students in the Queen's High School. That is Hitler Youth. That is exactly what happened in the 1930s with Hitler Youth. We are going back to that. And the UN was formed specifically to make sure nothing like this ever happened again, and yet they are siding with the anti-Semites.
Yes, well, they've been doing that, even that goes back to when they equated Zionism with racism. So yeah, by the way, that let's just get rid of the UN, turn it into a condo, and be done with the goddamn thing. It's a stupid experiment that's been hijacked by a bunch of morons, and not just third world morons, but the current head of the UN. He's an empty suit that basically an apologist to the Hamas bloodthirsty animals, and he should go. But he's right in the mainstream of where we are with the liberal globalist elite. And very interesting, though, that I think overall doesn't really expose. Let's just, they've been hiding around behind this shit for a long time. Doesn't it really expose the Democrats for who they really are? Let's just get right down to brass tacks. And something, yeah, you talk about it's a minority, but it's in an increasing percentage of the Democratic Party. Okay, if you look at the statistics, I think less than half of the Democratic constituency supports Israel. So it's not just a little fringe nutcase things. And I believe that the cowards, the Jewish cowards in the Democratic Party, I'm talking about the politicians, they're scared shitless because they know that they might be pushed out of office if they too strongly or push back on, or too strongly support Israel or push back on these animals. Your thoughts?
Yeah, they need to show some backbone. You are
I think
supposed to
so.
be you are supposed to be in office to do what is right, to serve the American people and their best interest. And kowtowing to violent protesters. Because let's face it, let's take a good look at these pro-Palestinian protests. There has been an enormous amount of violence. There have been, and this is something else. During the week, you had 3 Palestinians in, I believe it was Vermont, shot. And
Yes.
the media was up in arms. Everybody saying, oh, it's a hate crime. It needs to be investigated as a hate crime. The shooter needs to be prosecuted for hate crimes. And yet, multiple murders of Jewish people have taken place at these protests. And the official story, oh, well, we have no evidence that it was anti-Semitism. We have no evidence that it's a hate crime. Really? You didn't investigate the Palestinian murder for more than a few minutes when you decided, oh, it has to be a hate crime. But if it's a Jew, oh, it's not necessarily a hate crime. There could be extenuating circumstances. No.
Yada, 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 yada. Yes. All excuses. I agree with you, Dr. Lopkin.
So yeah, this is the worst I have ever seen in my lifetime, anti-Semitism. And the one shining moment out of all of this is that the pro-Palestinians released a list of companies who are publicly supporting Israel, and they're calling for a boycott of these companies. And it's not a short list. So people are coming out and stating, no, we are backing Israel. We are putting our money where our mouth is. And
except our Senate, except
the
McDonald's.
politicians.
Yeah, McDonald's does, but no, not Chucky Schumer. Yep, I got it. Yeah, it's really, really great. But it does have real consequences because Biden, or at least the administration, came out all totally 100% standing with Israel. Now it's, I don't know. And as every day goes by, they're more and more attaching stipulations to any potential aid, and essentially putting the brakes on Israel and micromanaging it. So there you go for our full support. That was the initial statement. That doesn't seem like it's really kind of happening, does it?
No, because he kowtowed to the left wing of the Democratic Party. He is afraid that he's going to be losing their votes. He is afraid that they will stay home next year, which, you know what? If you're stupid enough to believe that Hamas is a group of freedom fighters, please stay home because you're not bright enough to vote.
Okay, but you're also not bright enough to be in office. There's something
Yeah.
called courage. And if you're that, well, Biden, even before he became a senile moron, was always just a political hack. And now he's a senile political hack. How disgusting is it that you don't even have the principles to stand behind? Supposedly he was always a supporter of Israel, and now that it doesn't look like it's really in fashion anymore, he said, no, maybe not so much. What a pathetic, spineless piece of shit.
Yeah, it's a political calculation. That's all it is. He doesn't care about Israel. He doesn't care about the Jews. And,
He
you
did
know,
when it was
it's
fashionable.
right, because it was a political calculation. But I don't know if this is giving him credit or not, but let's, call a spade a spade. He's never cared about anybody but himself if it wasn't going to benefit him politically. No group,
100%.
no cause. The only thing he cared about was the money coming into his family business.
100%. Now there's a plan, and again, it's organized, centrally organized. Who knows? And maybe another self-hating Jew, Soros, is behind us. But they're talking about flooding the tree, and that is a planned mass protest for the lighting of the tree. Yeah, I believe it's in Central Park in New York City. How do you think that's going to play out to the average American? If it's actually if it unfolds, I think it could be when Joe Lunchpail sees this on TV, one of the few things that are still an American tradition, I'm not so sure that's going to play well in Peoria. What do you think?
No, it's not going to play well. And it does show the true nature of Hamas because everybody knows that the Hamas charter calls for the extermination of the Jewish people. What most don't know is that it also calls for the extermination of Christians. So when they start
And
realizing,
gays.
yes, and so when these people start realizing that the folks they've been supporting want to kill them too. And again, this is a problem with the educational system because they haven't been taught any of this and they need to be told. And instead of getting their news off of TikTok, if we actually had a responsible media that was spreading the word about the truth of what's going on, this would not be happening. But we don't have that. We've got a left wing media that is more concerned with the liberal agenda than reporting what actually happened. And it shows
Which is
more and more.
their responsibility. Which is
Yes.
their responsibility. And what I think I do have a comical side to me. Um, so ironic that the so-called the highest institutions of learning are really turning out morons. In fact, there was a survey, I love this, of elite corporate institutions. 67% of them are basically down on the college degree. Remember, it used to be you ain't going anywhere without that sheepskin. Guess what? We talked about this years ago. Shell shocking. So all this Palestinian shit and protesting shit you don't even know about. Yeah, it's all fun and shits and giggles, but when it comes right down to you're destroying your own credibility and institution. Isn't that ironical?
Well, no, it's not ironical, but that is what is happening. These people are showing their ignorance, and employers don't want to hire stupid people. And this is why, if you take a look at a lot of the protests, they're wearing masks. This is not because of COVID. This is not because it's a large crowd and they don't want to get sick. They are trying to hide their identities because they know what they are standing for is wrong and it's going to come back to bite them. And now you are seeing that instead of getting an education, these higher education institutions have been doing indoctrination, and the corporations are tired of it because they want to hire qualified people. They don't
Wait
want
a
to
second. I got to interject something because you're 100% correct, and that point needs to be elaborated on. Because it's not because it's they're doing what's really good or doing for whatever because they're nice people. No, they have a bottom line and a stockholder obligation, and they're looking at what's coming out of these so-called elite institutions, and they're saying, "Whoa." This is exactly the antithesis of what we need. And that's another reason why the once heralded MBA programs from great schools, the jobs are nowhere. It used to be the passport to success. It's a passport to welcome to Walmart. There you go.
Yeah, because they're not being educated, they are not being trained, they are not learning what they need to know to function in corporate America. And businesses don't want to have to hire people that they have to give a 4-year education to. You've already gone to college, you should have this. So they are tired of it. And you're also seeing the blowback against woke by, you mentioned that the corporations have to provide shareholder value. You are seeing the blowback against woke by the shareholders. And in fact, we've talked so much about Disney over the past several years, and go woke, go broke. They filed an annual report with the Securities and Exchange Commission where Bob Iger actually had to put a statement in this report stating that they have lost money because they are out of touch with American sensibilities. And they have turned out bomb after bomb after
Well, they just
bomb.
had a more recent bomb. Just to dovetail on your point, a $200 million disaster called Wish, and it's just fascinating. Well, it's sad and fascinating because obviously I grew up with Disney, and you just cross the Rubicon just like Bud Light, and you're a hardworking family. You just life's hard. You just want a little reprieve with the family, and you don't want a superhero movie where it's got a uh, a gay agenda or a woke agenda. You don't need that shit. You want a vacation from this shit. How does that sound?
Yeah, people want escapism. And when companies push their political agenda, that has turned consumers off. They are not going to see these Disney movies anymore. And the fact that it is so damaging to Disney that they had to mention it in an SEC filing really says that this has gone too far, and you're seeing the blowback now. And the
Okay, let
question,
me interject one thing real quick though. We talk about education, we talk about MBA. What are they teaching these MBA programs? I mean, that's like business 101, shareholder value, obligation to the share. It's not obligation to a socialist agenda. What the hell are they teaching?
well, the fact of the matter is the MBA program has
Is shot.
never been worthwhile. I remember back in the 90s when I had MBAs working for me, and I had to first teach them to unlearn everything they learned with their MBAs because it was theory and not how business actually worked. And I saw that over and over again. The MBA, and I've said this probably on this podcast, but certainly in presentations and on other interviews. Take a look at how many global massive companies were founded by college dropouts. Take a look at how many companies were founded by MBAs. Most of you can't name any. Now, take a look.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. My
Now
fault. Go ahead.
take a look at how many companies have been destroyed by MBAs, and that's a much larger number.
Yeah, let me just dovetail on that. I had a really smart friend. He worked in the advertising agencies in New York without a college degree, extremely bright. And I had a great line. He goes, "Beware of the unintended consequences of an MBA." In other words, they could
Yes.
take going to the bathroom into launching the space shuttle. When they they're all about all this bullshit theory and blah blah blah, because I worked with many consulting companies that were really derivatives of Ivy League MBA institutions, and they didn't know, yeah, theories, blah blah blah. I could probably write a book. They didn't know shit about real business. In fact, it was comical what they didn't know. You're like, really?
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
it was actually funny.
Yeah, the MBA has never been a worthwhile program. In fact, the only value that the MBA program ever had, was that the institutions running them had large networks of alumni that they would
That's it.
push these MBAs to. The networking had tremendous value. The
Yeah,
education didn't. And
you're right.
there was a great line in, I believe it was the final season of Mad Men, where they're told, one of their clients tells them that they need to reevaluate their advertising based on the 4 Ps. And when they asked a professor about this, the professor said, "Yeah, Andrew Carnegie didn't give a damn about the 4 Ps."
Oh no, 100.
Yeah,
I wish I remember that episode. Yeah, 100% correct. Yeah, and in fact, my interaction, I had many of them with the Bain Group, all from UPenn and whatever. They were talking about like decision trees. I remember I looked at one of them. I said, well, I don't want to spoil your day, and you can do your decision tree, but I'll tell you really quickly what will happen if you want to pursue this action. Home Depot is going to throw us out. Okay, so if you want to do the decision tree, go ahead. Knock yourself out. But if you want to save some time, I'll tell you right now what's going to happen. It was shocking. But what's not shocking is we have some Jewish groups. Thank God, there's still some chutzpah left. Let's say that are pressuring or at least trying to shed light on the sports institutions like the NFL and NBA to disavow their associations with BLM.
yeah. Everybody was so quick to support Black Lives Matter,
Yeah, yeah.
and
A
yet
corrupt organization, by the way.
yet Black Lives Matter came out in favor of the Palestinians. Now, there were a lot of Jewish donors to Black Lives Matter.
And supporters, yes.
Yes, and supporters. And they feel betrayed, as well they should.
Well, how about doing some research, genius, before you put the BLM sign on your
Well,
stupid lawn, you moron?
here's the problem with what happened with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter was two completely separate things. One was Black Lives Matter, the movement. And this was a support for African American rights. And this was worthy of support. This was what people believed in. But then there was Black Lives Matter, the
A business.
501c3 nonprofit, which was a corrupt organization that did nothing but line the pockets of its founders. And the media did not differentiate between these two. So you had a lot of people who said, well, of course I support African American rights. Of course I don't want cops to shoot them. Of course they should feel safe. And realistically, all of us should say, we want every American to feel they are being treated fairly, that they are safe walking the streets of their own neighborhoods.
Except if you're Jewish.
Well, yeah, apparently, but
Yes.
you have to pay attention to who is taking advantage of that agenda. And in this case, it was the BLM nonprofit that corporations gave tons of money to that
Shakedown
basically just
schemes.
just ripped everybody off.
And then, the leader of BLM, I forgot her name, a real genius, by the way, basically never filed any tax returns and said that she was triggered by that.
Yes,
Okay.
I
Well, you go.
I
I want you to go with your business, Dr. Lopkin. Don't file for a couple of years. And when they call you or go to your house, at that point, they'll go to your house. Just say, I didn't file because I was triggered. And maybe you can do the show. Will they allow you to do the show from prison? Just a
no,
thought. There you go.
probably not. But I have to tell you, I as a business consultant, I have worked with nonprofits. I have been called in to rescue nonprofits who had lost their nonprofit status. And I have had to do nonprofit taxes. And you know what? It's not that tough. There is nothing triggering about it. If you follow the directions, you can do it. The idea that they did not want to file taxes. And remember, this is a nonprofit. So they're not paying taxes, they're just filling out paperwork. And they didn't want to do that. They did not
Well,
want to follow the laws that the rest of the country all has to follow.
I have a really amazing, brilliant suggestion for BLM. Okay, so take your just brace yourself now. Take, the $3 million you spent on the houses and God knows where. Take $100,000 of that and hire an accountant. There you go.
Yeah,
Jeffrey L. Sherman. That's a
gotta tell you,
brilliant concept.
wouldn't even cost them 100,000.
I'm being
Yeah,
throw. When you're pissing away money, you might as
yeah.
well piss away money, right? So anyway, another real anti-Semite of noteworthy stature is Roger Waters. I remember in college, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, The Wall, you name it. But he not only is he a pro-Palestinian, which fine, but obviously very interesting because it was really all his activity in the for the Palestine was really just hiding a a fervor of anti-Semitism to even the point that he's having a trouble booking hotels and he's whining about it. Couldn't happen to a nicer piece of shit.
Yeah, this is something that the left has failed to appreciate. We've seen over the last several weeks, even going back, we had, it started, the big one that got the headlines was the NYU law student that was protesting in favor of Hamas, and the law firm took away their job offer. Over the last few weeks, we've seen Susan Sarandon, a very famous left wing
Washed up
activist
actress, yes, washed
who
up
has
actress.
was dropped by her agency. We saw the star of the Scream franchise movies dropped from the new movie because of their anti Semitic remarks. What the left has, and they all come back to, well, it's freedom of speech. We have the right to say this. Now, of course, that same freedom of speech apparently did not apply to the conservative movement and Donald Trump. Then, oh, you can't say that. But freedom of speech, as defined in the Constitution, says you have the right to your opinion. You have the right to state your opinion. It does not say anywhere that there will not be consequences for your opinion. It does not say that private companies have to do business with you. It doesn't say public companies have to do business with you. They have the right
For
to their opinions too.
Yeah, and calling your boss an asshole is free speech, but when it gets you with a pink slip, that's called consequences, isn't it? Um,
Exactly.
something that kind something that kind of shocked me, and I don't get it. New just came off the press. A new poll by Newsweek has Biden up over Trump by 1 point. But how the hell does that happen? You have an absolute moron that basically can't even appear in public anymore. How does that effing happen? And another term of Biden, it's called, how do you say, lights out. Turn the lights out, the party's over, as what's his name used to say on Monday Night Football. There you go.
Yeah, I think, again, I think this is a highly suspect poll. This was done by Newsweek, who've
Right at the
been
right time,
right,
correct? As his poll numbers, yeah.
who's been well known to swing left, but it's 1 point, which means it's within the margin of error. So
Shouldn't
that
even be.
that could be, well, a lot of these polls have been within the margin of error, but it all comes down to their methodology. And you have one when the New York Times poll, when the NBC poll, but say Trump is ahead. Well, that you have to pay attention to because their methodology has traditionally swung to the left. So if they're showing someone to the right is actually doing well, all right, you got to pay attention to that. But when you see that their own pollsters are providing fodder for their own point of view, you do have to question it. So I don't know. And again, I've said this about every poll, even the ones that show Trump up 5, 10 points. At this point, all of the polls are useless. We're so far, away from the actual election. There's no saying that any of these folks are going to turn out for the election, never mind vote the way they say in a poll now. So,
I would agree.
it doesn't matter if it says that Trump is ahead, it doesn't matter if it says Biden's ahead. Right now, these polls are basically just the media looking for an excuse to talk about something to fill airtime.
Well, speaking of filling airtime, we have the tomorrow's debate, 9 o'clock, I believe, on Fox. Red state, blue state, Newsom, DeSantis. What do you think? I'm
I,
watching it.
I think this is an excuse to fill airtime. I think this is going to be absolutely useless. Everybody knows what DeSantis stands for. Everybody knows what Gavin Newsom stands for. They're not going to be running against each other. They're not going, so there is absolutely no point to this debate. You want to know what's going on with their policies? Take a look at the number of U-Hauls that are moving from California to Florida. This is literally just an excuse to fill some airtime.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I think it. I guess it's maybe wishful thinking on my part because I despise Newsom to such a degree that I want the person from Central Casting to be unmasked as the moron he is. But we will see how it goes. Someone who is not a moron is a key figure in the Berkshire Hathaway organization. Is deceased at 99. A real genius, correct?
Yes, Charles Munger unfortunately passed away yesterday at the age of 99. This is a man who, at 99 years old, we've talked a lot about Biden's age and all of this. This is a man that proved that age is not synonymous with senility, not synonymous with ignorance. This guy was a certified financial genius. And he was just as responsible as Warren Buffett for Berkshire Hathaway's performance over the years. He was a giant in the financial industry. And from all reports, he was, to use a Yiddish phrase, a real mensch. He did not let the money go to his head. He did not, you know, let anything go to his head, quite frankly, like Warren Buffett. And this is somebody that was not as well known as he should have been, and he will be sorely missed. This was a giant of a man.
Just like Mr. Biden, right? There you
Oh,
go, age,
sure.
right? There. Well, anyway, that concludes this edition of Carnivore Bites, a very spirited edition, but sometimes emotions run high, Dr. Lopkin, don't they?
Yes, they do. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Carnivore Radio website, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
I thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Great show.
We'll see you next time.